Hello, San Francisco, and welcome once again to the Angelic Troublemakers. I'm your host, Alan Jones, and on today's program, why I agree with President Trump. This past week, we had, well, more than a week ago, we had a terrible situation where uh, in Charlottesville, there was an incident where uh, Confederate supporters were protesting the taking down of a statue. Well, it turned violent. White supremacist runs his car into a crowd of people. A young lady dies, the whole bit. And then the president chimed in. Well, there was people hating on both sides. They're equally to blame. They're this and that and this and that. And say what you will about the Confederates, but I agree with the president. He has said certain things that there was evil on both sides. He has said taking down these statues are terrible. They're beautiful statues. Well, okay, if that's your thing. I personally don't worship statues. But let's talk about Robert E. Lee briefly before I get into why I really agree with the president and beyond. Robert E. Lee, General Robert E. Lee, as I understand, was a loser. Yes, he was head of his class at West Point, and he was a general who defected from the American Army and, along with 10 other states or 11 states, developed this Confederate whatever to fight against the Union, the rest of the country. Of course, they were outnumbered. But the fact that he defected and fought against the country, that's a crime. And it always has been a crime. And so him and his groups, they claimed that they were just protecting states' rights. Well, we all know better than that. The argument was weak. They wanted to protect the right to own people. Well, if General Robert E. Lee and a bunch of white folks want to own white people, well, I can't go with that. I mean, it's like, if you want to do it, go on. It's when you want to own black people is where I come in and say, no, this is not right. But in my research of Robert E. Lee, I didn't find him to be that evil of a person. There was good and bad in him. And so I was thinking, when this protest happened, they wanted to keep their Confederate soldier general in place. And then there was a counter protest where these people gathered to shout down and stop this assembly. Well, my thought was, well, wait a minute. I recall a couple of years ago where I discovered, I'm not a historian, please, I'm just reading whatever. I realized that when we were dealing with this, when the Dylann Roof issue happened, I had discovered that General Ulysses S. Grant, one of our presidents, Ulysses S. Grant had defeated Robert E. Lee. And so the Union was kept together when Robert E. Lee wanted to try and separate it for these, rights. So the thing is if people want to worship a loser, I don't have a problem with that. Now, I'm not going to be honoring anybody on a statue. Anybody, including Jesus Christ. I believe in Jesus Christ. But a statue of him? No. I believe in worshiping the Lord and Savior of my life, Jesus Christ. But I don't worship statues. I don't honor them. You won't see me polishing them or anything. But that's just me. But when the president of the United States was dancing around and trying to do his thing on not coming forth and saying he denounces white supremacists and the right alt or alt-right, excuse me, and all of these different people, hey, we elected this man president. Not me personally. Well, I think that he did get half a vote. Why? Because I didn't vote for him or Hillary Clinton. I didn't vote for president. I voted for all the other issues on the November 16th ballot, but I left that blank. So technically, they both got half of my vote. So, but we elected this man president. So anything that comes with this, meaning we knew he was a racist. So now that we have a racist in the White House, why are we so surprised that he does not run to denounce these people who are other races, KKK, white supremacists, whatever you want to call them, alt-right? So I'm thinking, well, when we looked at this situation and what all the hubbub was about in this tragedy where a young lady lost her life, I was beginning to think, yeah, President Trump, you're right. There is blame to go on both sides. Why is there blame to go on both sides? Because if the people, the counter-protesters, had realized that these white supremacists were worshiping a loser or trying to protect a loser's statue, people should realize one other thing. I read that the statue that they were trying to tear down, and of course it will come down, has been up for 90 years. And in the 90 years, the little town of Charlottesville, Virginia, is of 47,000, I think is the number that I read of residents there. Now, in November 2016 election, they said that 80% voted for Hillary Clinton. Well, doesn't that sound like you're winning? Well, if you're winning, you got 80% of Hillary Clinton's vote. Why are you getting so upset because these little people have a little parcel? Sure, Charlottesville, they went on, they changed the name from Lee Park to Emancipation Park, which I don't even agree with that. But the fact that that's another issue. But the fact is that in this situation, just because people want to run and protest against you doing something, that don't mean you need to run and counter protest. So I, like the president, say there's blame to go around. You know, there's blame to go around when you look at the fact that, hey, we are a divided country. And when you have a divided country, people get killed like this. So I'm not willing to just say that this is the KKK, the neo-Nazis, these white supremacists. No, because we who don't agree with their stance have to be more educated about what we're fighting against. I looked up some history on Robert E. Lee. Well, my goodness, you can tear down every statue in the United States based on, if this is the criteria for tearing down a statue. Now, I must go beyond this. The president was talking about, well, what's is going to be next? It's going to be Stonewall Jackson, who they're trying to tear down, his another general under Robert E. Lee. They're tear down his statue, and they were talking about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, and the president was, well, what's it going to be next? Who's next? Well, I have to say, wait a minute. I agree. I think that these statues should stay in place. Why? Because I am opposed to police brutality. Well, how does that make sense? When in San Francisco, we witnessed in Florida the issue with Trayvon Martin, who was killed by a wannabe cop. I thought that it was such a horrible thing that a 19-year-old kid could be walking down the street and lose his life the way Trayvon Martin did. I did not think that anybody 19 years old should ever forget about that here in San Francisco. So I proposed renaming San Francisco City College Trayvon Martin Community College, San Francisco. Now, of course, people thought I was stupid, and they said, well, he wasn't even from here. Well, you have to look at the fact that you ever hear of Medgar Evers? Mississippi, he was killed. Why? Because he wanted to help black people. He was a civil rights great. He wanted to get black people voting rights. Well, he was murdered. The state of New York has a college named after him. Well, he wasn't from New York. But the fact is, some of these things are so horrible. I believe that we should let these Confederate so-and-sos have their little old thing, but far as addressing police brutality now, I believe that we should be erecting names on some of the people who are senselessly killed by law enforcement today. Who will ever forget Oscar Grant being shot in the back on a BART train? Well, I didn't like the fact that the people in Oakland tore up Oakland over this situation. However, I changed the name to Laney College, who was named after a Mormon. I changed that name to Oscar Grant Community College. Now, people think, oh, this really, wait a minute. If you don't want to forget something, or you don't want somebody to forget something, you have to make a bold statement. When Mario Woods was killed by a police firing squad, I proposed, instead of there being a hunger strike in front of the Mission District Police Station, I proposed renaming the Bayview police station after Mario Woods. Now, you might think, well, wait a minute, that don't make any sense. Why would we want this young man's name on a police station? Well, let's face it, we're not going to get rid of police. And quite frankly, I think that police, the root of all the police brutality, is arrogance. Throw in badges for brains, and then you get to the racist cops. I'm saying that if you're going to make a statement that this is not right, by putting these victims' names in prominent places, you're basically telling the police, no, enough's enough. And so the people who are being murdered, in my opinion, by law enforcement, and we hear the countless reasons of, well, I thought he had a gun. I thought he was reaching for a weapon. What happens? Tamir Rice, 12 years old, 11, 12. When the police rolled up on him, he didn't even have a second out of their squad car and shot him dead. Well, we should not forget this. And we don't want to just have some little old memorial on him. I think that we should really think of renaming some of these prominent structures in our country after some of these egregious acts of violence against black people. And so if you want to honor a Confederate flag, you go right ahead. I want to honor the names of Philando Castile, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, the list goes on. And I'm saying that by us taking the high road, I guarantee you that we will prevail. But if we get down into the mud with white supremacists, KKK, and all alt-right, and do all of the things that they're doing by showing up to their protests and fighting them, well, what is that going to do? We're going to just stay in the mud with them and be just as hateful as them. But I'm saying if we have the power to vote and the will to vote, we can rise above all of this. Let them have their statues. Let them have their little old flag of hate. When I look at a Confederate flag, sure, I think racism, but it's not going to kill me. And I guarantee that even in a place like Charlottesville, what is it, North Carolina? Charlottesville, Virginia, or wherever it is, don't even know. See there, I told you I don't know my history, or by, you know what I mean. Anyway, the fact of the matter is the fact that I don't know of these issues, I'm saying, well, wait a minute. In the little bit that I did research, I'm saying that these counter-protesters, they're just reactionists. They're reacting to the Confederate flag. Yeah, we know it was hateful. Well, wait a minute. There's an awful lot of hate going on. And just because they have this symbol of hate, which in Charlottesville has been turned around to where 80% of that tiny town voted for Hillary Clinton in the last election, give me a break. Don't tell me that you're really for or against this just because you can go out to a park and protest with a baseball bat saying, I'm not going to stand for this hate, and you got hate foaming off, out your mouth. The fact of the matter is, even when Trump called them peaceful people, well, we know he was talking out the side of his neck. But the fact is why are we talking out the side of our neck when we say we hate hateful people, but we do it with such hate? In San Francisco, I read in the paper where this guy who organized something that's supposed to be an upcoming event of, they said it was white supremacists. But the person who organized the event is Japanese. Well, how are you going to tell me and get me to believe that this is a KKK group when you got a Japanese person who is the organizer? The point is, we are reacting to certain hate, and we really don't know what we're doing. And therefore, I say we need to step back and strategize from a wise man's perspective of, okay, you can have your little old hate group. Let's see if it can outnumber those of us who choose to love. We all keep saying love's going to win in the end. Well, how is love going to get a word in edgewise if we're doing all of this hate? I believe that if there's enough love going around, hate can't get in a word edgewise. But we are coming together in San Francisco, meaning political leaders, and telling the federal government to revoke the permit for a group because it's said to be a hate group. Well, you got to give me more evidence of this being a hate group if it's supposed to be some white supremacists, but the head organizer is Japanese. I'm not buying that. And so I know that there's, people who are more knowledgeable on this. I'm not calling you a liar. I'm just saying, well, wait a minute. Something's not right. Do some investigation. Don't just demand that they rescind these people's right to protest. Since when do white folks who hate black folks get denied the right to hate? They've been doing it ever since this country has been this country. And they're going to continue to do it. Are their numbers dwindling? Yes, thank God. And thank God for the fact that many people have learned to love, and we see the silliness of it. I must interject that somebody said something to me to where they were criticizing me playing the race card. And I said to them, well, wait a minute. I think that it's really funny how whenever white people suggest when a black man should and should not play the race card, it's ridiculous. But the fact is, even though I don't mind playing the race card, and quite frankly, I love playing the race card for this very reason. I didn't shuffle the cards, I didn't cut the cards, and I certainly was not allowed to deal the cards. I'm just merely playing the hand that was dealt me. And the hand that was dealt me so far is a lot of black men, unarmed, unjustifiably killed by white police officers, mostly. And so by playing that hand, I'm saying, well, why don't we get together and not put up statues, but bold names on buildings, prominent buildings. And when I said a police station for the Mario Woods shooting, you need to research that Mario Woods and look at that video one more time. And look at all the police around him and how they fired on that young man. And might I add, he was a threat to no one. Did he have a knife in his hand? Yes. But look at all of the officers around him. There was no threat. And for him to have his name on a police station is a reminder to all police. That's not how we police. Now, if you want to rename 3rd Street Mario Woods, I'll go along with that too. But my point is this. If these Confederate people want to honor their past, as racist as it is, let them do it. We should be about the future. And the future is we aren't going to put up with any of that. And we're going to start honoring these black people who have been gunned down at the hands of white people under the color of law, to where we'll just see how long it is before they get the message. Now, sure, when I say this, I realize people, oh, no, we can't do that. But I can guarantee you, there's not going to be a stopping or a slowing down of police brutality when you look at the fact that there is nothing right now that will give them a reason to stop what they're doing. Police are people too. And I know that when people put on the badge, some of them have good intentions, but quite frankly, I think that there's an innateness of putting on a uniform where arrogance is there. You know, when you have people who want to be police officers way before they're of age, I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. Everybody does wrong. So for you to want to thrust yourself to the front as a defender of the law, you need to check yourself. Because I'm telling you, we need police, but we don't need arrogant police. And the best way to combat arrogant police is to remind them of what their arrogance has done in the community, and especially in the black community. And by having more of the people who they gunned down lifted up by putting their names on some of the structures in San Francisco starting is a good place to start. We don't need to be out at Crissy Field protesting against what a so-called neo-Nazi group is doing. They said that they may have, because it's federal land, they may be allowed to have their guns out there, concealed weapons. Well, think of it this way. Let's say they all come out to Crissy Field and they all have these concealed guns on them. Well, if counter-protesters aren't out there, the only people they have to shoot is themselves. Don't be dumb. Don't go out there looking for a confrontation. We are smarter than that, I hope. But in San Francisco, our leaders are leading us down a path of unrighteousness.